I've had the concept of a quarantine city, such as secure, kicking around in my head for years before I finally put fingers to keyboard and composed this story. You'll note that I changed history, and I left out COVID, in order for the time frames to align with one of the book's non-fictional elements, that being Como TV's March 2019 special, Seattle is Dying documentary. I highly recommend watching it as well as its follow-up, The Fight for the Soul of Seattle, before you read this book. Both were on YouTube as I write this. Everything that follows this page, until the acknowledgments at the end, is presented through the eyes of fictional author George Stoltz, coming to you from the year 2039 as the 4th of July holiday approaches. A book within a book, if you will. My hope is that this story makes you think about how society is dealing with its misfit population today. And by misfit, I'm referring to repeat criminal convicts, substance abusers, people suffering from serious mental illness who have no means of support, and, last but not least, the homeless population. I would also like to think that this book provides you with hope as to what could happen. It is early in the morning on February 15th, 2039, a date that is easy for me to remember because it is also the anniversary of our first date. With my now wife Olivia, I'm referring to, of course. Anyway, I'm having our faithful copy maker whip me up a cup of Thomas Hammer's delightful Fireball blend, which I have the factory in Spokane shipped to our place in Huntington Beach. For those of you unfamiliar with the greater Los Angeles area, home is about 30 miles south of downtown LA. My cell sat rings. George, it's me. Quick question. What do you know about Secure Washington? Benny, who has been my agent for all of my books to date, gives me pause. Well, good morning, Benny. Early morning, I might add. Yes, well, I don't know. I've seen a few news stories about it several years ago on TV and probably read an article or two, but not much more than that. Why do you ask? Well, you're always looking for something catchy to write about. And from what I can tell, and I've spent the week scouring my sources as far as books concerning Secure goes, I think that a detailed historical account of the place might be right up your alley. Nobody else is looking into the history of Secure as far as I know. And get this, Secure will be marking the 10th anniversary of its gates opening on July 4th. Wow, Benny, that sounds interesting. Secure opened back in 2029 then. As they say, time flies. And with that introduction, dear reader, you understand how this project began. Cozy up for yet another installment in my Those Who Made It Happen series of biodocs. As always, I'm eternally grateful to my faithful readers. A lot of hard work goes into the creation of a new book, but you make it all worthwhile. Thank you. Much of the nation refers to the West Coast as the left coast, given its nearly unified Democratic Party alignment. Whether or not that has anything to do with the out-of-control drug use, homeless population, property destruction, and unrelenting crime, I can't say for certain. Many so-called red states struggle with the same problems, after all. My personal opinion, for what it's worth, is that politicians simply called the wrong play when plenty of other knowledgeable people could see a blitz coming. I'm sorry, I'll try to refrain from using sports analogies going forward. If one becomes addicted to heroin, meth, or fentanyl, then they have a disease, much like catching the measles or being diagnosed with cancer. Why burden our already taxed criminal justice system with arresting, prosecuting, and incarcerating drug users? They're only hurting themselves, after all. They need treatment, not a jail sentence. As for the homeless population, what did we expect with stratospheric housing prices? And for such petty crimes as shoplifting and graffiti tagging, blame it on the high cost of living and the sense of hopelessness that comes from that. But the reality of the situation is quite different, isn't it? People who become addicted to the hard drugs need more hard drugs. That's what the drugs do to their brains. And if they don't get more, they go through extremely painful withdrawal symptoms. And once they come out of that, their cravings are still with them. The addicts tend to coalesce around one another, as that is where they can easily score their next high. If they haven't yet lost a job they may have been holding, it's only a matter of time, with ubiquitous drug testing being the norm these days. With no job, an expensive habit to feed, they are soon unable to pay the rent or a house payment and find themselves out on the street. With no means of support, but still needing to get high, they turn to crime. As far as graffiti is concerned, drugs are delivered to addicts mostly by criminal gangs, and gangs love to mark their territory. It would be refreshing to see a politician walk up to the microphone in a press conference and say something like this: regarding the way that our political and legal system deals with drug addicts and dealers, I'm now stating for the record that my assessment was wrong. But they can't do that. They will never do that, as it would lead to a skewering by the opposition and most likely mark the end of their political careers. All of that serves as a segue to our story. As luck would have it, a group of people way up in the northwest part of our country, all from a county that few people ever heard of outside of Puget Sound, became fed up. From the criminal justice revolving door to the crazy people attacking innocents on the streets and sidewalks, to the homeless tents and boxes on public properties such as sidewalks and parks, to the freeway rest areas transformed into homeless camps, to the raw sewage spilling out of barely running RVs onto the streets, to the open drug use, the garbage, the graffiti, all of it. They were fed up with all of it. And a local TV station's documentary called "Seattle is Dying" only confirmed what they all knew from experience working and visiting in that city's downtown area. These folks, all normal people who were law-abiding, tax-paying citizens with homes and jobs and families, they wanted to do more than just complain. They wanted to bypass the politicians and take their radical proposal directly to the people in the form of a citizens' initiative. But what was that radical proposal? Build a quarantine city for the worst of the state's misfits. It would be a hybrid city, part prison and part normal. Criminals would only get so many strikes, that is, misdemeanor on up criminal convictions, before they were sent to this new city for what would most likely be the remainder of their lives, although they would be given one last chance to get their act together and return to normal society. And so, after a long and difficult road, Washington State's 282nd city was born on July 4th, 2029. That city's name is Secure. As Secure approaches its 10th anniversary, I wanted to present the story of how it all went down, from the initiative creation to the signature drive to the planning and construction, from the staff who keeps the city running to the population of misfits living within its walls, to the people who earn their way back into normal society and have kept out of trouble. This incredible story is their story. I hope that you enjoy it. Just south of Olympia and within sight of the Capitol Dome, US 101 heads west towards Washington's southwest coastal cities of Aberdeen, Hoquiam, and the vacation getaway towns of Ocean Shores and Seabrook. After about 5.5 miles, the freeway transitions into State Route 8 to complete the journey. Once you are on the outskirts of tiny Elma, you see it. You can't help but see it. Over on the left, which would be south of Elma, sits the unmistakable site of a nuclear power plant. Actually, it is the unmistakable site of what was going to become a nuclear power plant. In 1972, the Washington Public Power Supply System purchased land to construct a total of 5 nuclear power facilities. Reactors 1, 2, and 4 were to be constructed east of the Cascades in Richland, while reactors 3 and 5 were slated for the tiny town of Satsop. By early 1980, both sites were alive with workers. By January of 1982, construction started winding down after the necessary bonds could no longer be sold. It turned into the largest municipal bond default in United States history, by far. Of the 5 scheduled plants, only WNP-2, which stands for Washington Nuclear Project, was completed and made operational. WNP-3 made it to 76% completion, while WNP-5 only reached 16%. At first, WPPSS, hence the derogatory nickname Whoops, thought of keeping WNP-3 on life support, as it was the furthest along towards completion, but in 1994 they finally pulled the plug. In 1999, the construction permit was terminated, driving the final nail in the coffin. The site was transferred to the Satsop Redevelopment Project, which eventually selected the Port of Grace Harbor as its new owner. The port created the Satsop Business Park, leasing out a scattering of the smaller buildings on the 1,800-acre site to roughly 50 different tenants. The larger buildings, 2 496-foot-tall cooling towers, 2 280-foot-tall reactor containment shells, WNP-3's 4-level, 2 above ground and 2 below, reactor auxiliary building that surrounds reactor 3, and a 300,000 square foot turbine building which stands approximately 120 feet high, were all constantly monitored for any safety concerns. Reactor 5's containment shell was less complete and thus less stable than the structure that was to surround Reactor 3. Why was WPPSS unable to sell more bonds? Because, and this is important to our story, the people of Washington overwhelmingly voted yes on Citizens Initiative I-394 in the November 1981 election, which forced Whoops to put any future bond sales up to a vote of the public. One initiative would doom Satsop, while another would save it.